Hey, Pretty Girl Club. So today I want to talk about how I put myself on a pedestal and how I build micro validations for myself. So the term micro validation, that's just a term that I made up because I couldn't think of another way to describe it. But you know how they say microaggression, like you walk into a room and people are like being mean to you or they follow you around the store and it's a microaggression. So this is the exact opposite. It is micro validation. So I remember when I was much younger and I grew up in an all white background, I was technically the darkest person in my classroom, the darkest person in the high school. So I was technically the dark skinned person in comparison to these Nordic white people at my school. So I remember having that feeling of being invisible. I think part of it was because at the time I had internalized the inferiority complex that was placed upon me by the black people in my life. So people would say to me, oh, people at that school, they're not going to like include you because you are quote unquote black. And according to the one drop rule, you would have been a slave. And like, people around me, they would kind of put this mindset in front of me that if somebody is not black, that they are automatically going to be racist towards me. And so I remember going into school and kind of sometimes not speaking out, not raising my hand in class, not trying out for different sports teams and stuff. Or if I had to speak in front of the class, there were times when I would get nervous. And it's funny because I'm actually an extrovert, but going to that school and then hearing black adults tell me that I'm basically not going to fit in, that changed me from being my normal extroverted, like carefree self to suddenly becoming more reserved than normal. I remember just being naturally more nervous because I was going through kind of like this culture shock. And so as time went on, I learned how to build micro validation. So, for example, let's say you do not have pretty privilege, but you are good at sports. You can try out for a sports team or you can join an adult sports league. That is a way that you can get micro validation. Having people walk up to you and say, hey, good job on that pass. Like, wow, you did a really great job at hockey practice today. Oh my gosh, it was so cool seeing you run that marathon. All of those things are micro validations. And I learned about this concept when I was a teenager because I noticed that what I was experiencing when I was in high school, when I was around all these quote unquote white people, I noticed that I was calling things racism when they weren't racism. So, for example, when this one white girl got asked to the prom, I was putting it on the person being racist, but the guy who asked her to the prom, he didn't say anything negative about people of color. He simply asked a different girl to the prom. And so once I stopped assuming the worst about other people, that actually helped me to kind of like come out of my shell and having more of a positive mindset and just kind of like being nice in general. It made other people more open to being nice to me. And by the way, I will say that even though there were some like racist people and stuff, for the most part, the people I grew up around, they were very neutral and they were nice to me. One thing I've noticed is that most people in general, they're not going to just come up and like randomly start cursing you out or randomly like have something against you. Usually people are just kind of minding their own business. And so one thing I've learned in order to build micro validation is to focus internally instead of constantly focusing externally. You know how people talk about the concept of having an internal locus of control versus an external locus of control? Having an internal locus of control, it means that you take responsibility for your actions. It means that you don't blame external forces for your own circumstances. So I noticed that sometimes when people accuse others of randomly like being racist, colorist, texturist, or featurist, a lot of people who do that to the extreme, they tend to have an external locus of control. It's the same as like, you know how unambiguous black men, they will say the government is against them and like people took them out of the home and like the welfare system screwed them over. That's an external locus of control. Or saying things like, Hollywood is automatically not going to promote me because I am a dark-skinned, unambiguous woman, and so I'm never going to be considered beautiful. Once again, that's an external locus of control. So the way that I kind of was able to build micro-validation for myself was by always focusing internally, by reminding myself that actually, I'm not living in your world. you're in my world, okay? Because I am navigating this earth through my own eyes. I'm thinking with my own brain. And so I'm the main character in my life. I'm not sitting on the sidelines. Nobody is better than me. Nobody is higher up on a pedestal than me. So let's go ahead and even the playing field here, okay? I'm not better than you, but you're also not better than me. So how you like them apples? And that was kind of my first step to regaining my own sense of power back. It was focusing on myself, not giving an F if somebody else was like asked to prom or, what the other girls were doing in my high school. I don't know why I tend to use high school as an example. I just feel like it's a good example. But once I started focusing on who I am as a person, then I was able to examine myself because a lot of people, they don't realize that getting to know yourself is a process. You don't know yourself. You might think that you know yourself, but you actually do not know every single aspect of your human psyche. And that's actually amazing. You don't know how you would react in certain situations because you haven't experienced them yet. And so you, if you want to, you can spend your life kind of going on this journey of getting to know yourself better. And that was something that I started to do for myself. So instead of copying the other girls at my school, like kind of copying the brands they were wearing, copying the makeup they were wearing, I started to look at myself and say, wait a minute, what is my foundation shade and skin tone, and like what brands represent my skin tone range the best? Who cares what the other girls in high school are doing? This is my world, it's not their world. This is my face, it's not their face. So they're actually irrelevant in my own personal journey of beauty and finding these micro validations for myself. And by the way, one example of a micro validation is putting on makeup and like actually getting good at it. So I remember that was my first time that I was really able to have a good sense of micro validation. It was when I finally learned how to do makeup for my skin tone, for my features, even though I went to a white school. So none of my white friends were like telling me what to wear anymore because they would kind of give like bad advice and stuff. And so I remember I made it into this whole little routine. So this is when I was about 17 years old. I had a little vanity stand in my bedroom, and I used to get up in the morning, I would sit in my little chair, and then I would have this whole little makeup routine. I would make it kind of like a fun and exciting process for myself, as opposed to, oh, my features look different than the girls in school. They all have like blue eyes and extremely pale skin and like very small lips, very small noses. I don't look like that. No, instead of me staring at what they look like in the mirror, I started to stare at myself in the mirror. And that was how I learned, like, okay, what are my undertones? What features on my face do I want to bring out when it comes to makeup? And I remember after practicing doing my makeup for like a few months, there was one day where I just absolutely slayed my makeup. And I remember feeling like this sense of micro validation. I was like, wow, I thought that I would never be able to like blend my eyeshadow. And now I actually was able to do a smoky eye and it looks really good, like from every angle. And so that's what I mean when I say micro validation. It could be a small achievement. So, like in my case, that was just a small achievement. It was just between me, myself, and I. I didn't do it for other people or like in front of other people. I found myself valuable enough to learn how to accentuate my favorite features about myself. As I got older, another way that I was able to have micro validation was by always expressing myself when it came to fashion, like dressing really cute, but not dressed up to where it's like I had to spend a lot of money. Unless you have a lot of money to spend on clothes, then go for it. But I like to wear outfits that go with the setting that I'm in. So when I'm at the gym, I like to do the same thing like how I would do with my makeup. I make my getting ready for the gym routine into like a whole thing. So I'll play my music. Like right now I'm listening to the new Ariana Grande album. So I'll turn on like whatever music I'm listening to at that time. And then I will put my little deodorant on and my little cute crop t-shirt and my leggings. And I've really been into different little bandanas lately. I don't know why, I've just been into it. So I'll put my little outfit on and then I'll be listening to my music and kind of getting ready. And once again, I am purposely going out of my way to make the whole thing a fun process. And it feels validating when I look in the mirror and I know that, hey, my gym outfit is slaying today. Like this t-shirt, it looks so cute with my leggings. It matches my little bandana. My little nude lip color looks good with everything. So that's another form of micro validation. It's creating routines and rituals and kind of incorporating your beauty hobbies into your everyday life. Incorporating your beauty hobbies into your level up journey. Remember how in a previous video I talked about beauty hobbies? What are your beauty hobbies? Because having hobbies related to your own personal beauty, that shows me how much you actually love yourself. Have you ever noticed that the people who lack self-love, they tend to neglect themselves? And so this is why, like on some of the videos where I did compilations of women saying they hate their hair and stuff like that, or their hair won't grow, oftentimes it's because those women, they do not love themselves to the point where they will neglect their hair because they don't love their hair anyway. So they're like, F it, I'm going to be covering up my hair for the rest of my life anyway. So who cares what happens underneath this wig? And so neglect is actually a form of like low self-esteem. And so the way that I like to see it is I am going to show up for myself every day because I am the princess of my life. This is my life. This is my movie. This is my life story that I'm living right now. Nobody else is living this life except for me. So I am the star. I am the boss. This also ties into the concept of decentering men as well. I started, like, once I began decentering men, it helped my life to become more focused on me because I had more time to think about what my goals are or like what my desires are and why I desire those things. But another thing that I learned that actually caused me to have more micro validation was the concept of detachment. So focusing internally, it helped me to detach from other people's opinions, what other girls look like at my high school, what kind of makeup they're doing, what the other people are wearing at the gym, because I was just so focused on myself to the point where I didn't care. So like nobody else could really break me down. And it also caused my anxiety to go down because I wasn't walking into the gym looking at everybody else anymore. I wasn't walking into the workplace worrying about what everyone else was wearing. I was so kind of insulated and focused on myself to the point where those voices and all of that noise was able to get cleared from my head. I've noticed that a lot of people who struggle really bad with insecurity, they don't have mental clarity. Their mind is cluttered with, I'm not good enough. He won't like me because I'm dark skinned. She didn't hire me because I'm black. So and so other group of people, they're doing better than me. So their mind is so cluttered up with all of these useless thoughts because think about it. Is that information useful to you? The way that I like to see it is I am ruthless when it comes to the types of things that I let into my mind, like the things that I let into my psyche. I don't even watch movies really. I'm not telling you guys to do that. I know that that's very abnormal. But I understand, even as a light skinned woman, I understand how biased media is and how brainwashing media is to the point where I refuse to just sit there and like watch something for 2 hours and I don't know what this movie is going to be about. I don't know what the subliminal messaging is going to be about. You guys know that I'm obsessed with like psychology and sociology and subliminal messaging and brainwashing and stuff. So I understand that no matter what I do, I am constantly being influenced by others. I'm constantly being brainwashed, whether it's in a positive way or in a negative way. And so that's why I like to kind of guard. In Christianity, they would call it guarding your heart. I grew up Christian and I still agree with that concept to this day. So I like to guard my heart. I like to guard my self-esteem. So for the women who are like, oh, these movies, they don't show me as the love interest, I wouldn't even click on a movie. Well, first of all, I wouldn't click on a romance movie at all because at this point I have decentered men altogether. But even if I would click on a movie that's like a romance movie, if the love interest doesn't look like me, I'm not watching it because I'm not a follower. So I don't care how popular it is. I didn't watch Mia Culpa. I don't care how popular it is. Kelly Rowland doesn't look like me. Kelly Rowland is in a hypogamous marriage. I think that movie was a Tyler Perry movie. I have a lot of problems with not only Tyler Perry, but also with the scripting of his movies. So I automatically was like, oh no, I'm not watching it. I don't care who watches it. I don't care how great it is. I don't care if it gets a Golden Globe because I'm just going to kind of assume based on the little bit of information that I do know that it's not going to be helpful. It's kind of going to be a waste of time. And I just kind of have better things to do. And I know that that might sound kind of like mean or people might be thinking, oh, but you never relax and just like, do something that makes you feel good. Well, yeah, for me, creating content makes me feel good. Also, it's not like I don't watch anything. I'm more of a social media person than a TV, Netflix person. So I'm more likely to spend 2 hours on YouTube or something rather than spending 2 hours on like Netflix or Hulu. But that's another one of the ways that I've been able to give myself micro validation. It's by using my creativity. It's by understanding that I am a creator. For those of you who are religious and spiritual, a lot of people, they still have low self esteem. It's like, how do you believe in a creator and you believe that you are created in the creator's image, but then you yourself don't want to create anything? That doesn't even make logical sense to me. So, the way that I like to think of it is I am creating my life every single day. I get to create the best day possible for myself. So I guess how I kind of think of it is, how can I make today the best day ever, or at least the best day that it could be? What small things can I do to validate myself? Not just validating my outer beauty, but validating my creativity. Did you know I used to think that I was not a creative person? I am a full-time content creator at this point, but just a year ago, I didn't think that I was a creative person. And that's because I was not spending enough time with myself. I wasn't spending enough time kind of asking myself questions and observing myself. So this is going to sound a little bit out there, but the way that I think of it is I like to just sit with my thoughts and I just observe each thought as it's passing by. So, for example, let's say I am standing in the bathroom next to some white women and then a thought comes into my mind. These women are probably racist. I don't internalize that thought and make it like, oh, this is truth. Not every single thing that I think in my head is true. And I think that's the problem with people who have inferiority complexes. They are internalizing their own negative thoughts as truth. But I've learned to just kind of observe my thoughts and just let them pass me by. I just let them float away. If that thought is not helpful to me, then I'm just going to kick it out of my brain. I'm going to basically like reject it, because the soft life for me, you guys heard me say this on another video. What the soft life means, in my opinion, is my mind is healthy. I'm living a mentally healthy life. You know how I talk about decentering men? Some of you guys are like, oh, well, what do you center your life around? I center my life around my mental health. So that means the absence of traumas. It means the absence of stress. It means that I am content, I'm fulfilled. And it also means that I have so much mental clarity to the point where my creativity is endless. That's the idea of the soft life for me. For me, the soft life means I can find inspiration around me anywhere at any time. It means I'm like feeling inspired. It means that I'm disciplined because, side note, discipline is the highest form of self-love, or at least that's my opinion. I think that it's the highest form of self-love. Think about how much discipline it takes to build a company from the ground up. Think of how much discipline it takes to lose the weight or to grow your hair 20 inches. This is why the women online who have like hair all the way down to their tailbone, why they get a lot of views and stuff, because people understand, even on a subconscious level, that it takes a lot of discipline and it also takes a lot of self-love or loving your hair enough to grow it out that long and to like be consistent for years and to like restore it when it gets damaged and to go and like spend the money, buy the oils or whatever, and to have the discipline to like get to the next level. People understand that it does require some form of self-love. So even if you don't love your entire self, well, you at least love the length of your hair because you took all of these years to like really care for it and make sure that it's healthy. So even if all you have is your long tailbone length hair, that is still a micro validation. So even if nobody else can see your long hair underneath the wigs, like part of why I'm not insecure about wearing wigs myself is because, well, number one, I don't talk crap about anyone's phenotype, but then number two, I know that even if nobody else sees it, underneath my wigs and underneath my makeup, I genuinely do love my hair and take care of it and stuff. And like, it's healthy. So, even if I were to rip the wig off, actually, I have ripped my wig off before in public. I don't feel any sense of, oh my God, like I'm ashamed of myself or I'm ugly. Same thing with makeup. Like, even if I take off my makeup, I don't feel like, oh wow, like I look so ugly, I need to hide myself. So I'm still receiving micro validation whether I'm wearing the wigs and makeup or not, because I know within myself that I take care of my actual skin. I take care of my actual hair. And so I don't have any guilt that is associated with wearing the wigs or wearing the weaves. And so one really big form of validation for me was removing areas of my life where I have guilt. So, for example, I've noticed that I only experience guilt if I feel like I've done something wrong, or if I feel like I've done something where I would be embarrassed by it. So, I've learned to just not participate in those activities. If I have to hide it, I probably shouldn't be doing it. That's kind of how I think about it. So, it was actually very validating to remove the guilt that came with wearing wigs and weaves, or the guilt that came with being lighter skinned, or having certain privileges in life. It helped me to not feel guilty by realizing that, number one, the society that we live in is biased, and then number two, everybody else around me is going to be utilizing whatever their skills are, whatever their privileges are, whatever their connections are. They're going to be utilizing the same things. And so that takes away my guilt from enjoying whatever privileges I have and like being grateful for them, such as being able bodied, or, having food, being able to not be homeless and stuff like that. So having a sense of gratitude, that is a better emotion for me as opposed to feeling guilt. And removing the guilt, that in and of itself is a micro validation. So when I say micro validation, I'm not only talking about outer beauty. I'm talking about validating your beauty, validating your emotions. That is another big one. I used to never validate my emotions when I was younger. And this was partially because I was raised in Christianity. I was raised with a lot of word of faith teachings. And so people in my family would say things like, we don't listen to our emotions. We listen to what the Bible says. We don't listen to our emotions. We listen to God. I'm not led by my feelings. I'm not led by my emotions. My emotions are fickle. And even though those things are true, like, yeah, there are certain times where you shouldn't just be controlled by your emotions. So I understand where they were trying to go with it. But one thing I learned though is that it's okay to validate my emotions, but then not be controlled by them. So, for example, I am able to validate the fact that, hey, I've experienced bullying before from women who I felt were jealous of me. That is a valid feeling. But at the same time, it doesn't mean I have to like define my whole character and define my whole entire life based on those feelings. So I can acknowledge and validate a piece of myself without making it affect me negatively. But one thing I have noticed is that if I don't validate my emotions, it gives other people the ability to gaslight me. So, for example, let's say I'm with a guy and that guy is looking at other women, he's flirting with other girls, and I'm feeling the emotion of anger. I'm feeling the emotion of sadness. I'm feeling the emotion of, wow, I wasted my time and like this is trash. Like, what am I doing in this relationship? I'm feeling all of those emotions, but then I don't validate them. Well, that's not good because that's basically me gaslighting myself, me lying to myself, me trying to cover up my own emotions. That's not going to help me to make the right decision because then I'm just going to brush it under the rug and be like, oh, this isn't a big deal. When in reality, it is. Your emotions are your body trying to send you a signal that, hey, this makes me feel really happy, or hey, this is trash. I don't like this scenario. I don't like what's going on here. And so acknowledging my emotions, that is another form of micro validation for myself. And it has helped me to put myself on the pedestal because now I can create better boundaries to where I'm like, no, I'm not staying with the cheater. No, I don't want toxic friendships. And that by default puts me on a pedestal because I'm able to cut people out of my life with no remorse and no guilt. And it's all because I feel like I am valuable enough to establish boundaries. Anyway, what do you ladies think? What is your way of giving yourself micro validation? Let me know in the comment section and I'll talk to you next time. Stay pretty, ladies.